Welcome to Wandering Jews at J Squared Adventures. Travel far enough and you meet yourself.
We're your hosts. I'm Scott.
I'm Sorrel.
Here in the village of Todra, in the heart of the Atlas Mountains, they would take a child that reached the age of 5. They would put a crown of flowers on his head in our village of Todra. A crown would be put on his head when he reached the age of 5. All the children in the street would put on a party for him when he turned 5 in our village of Todra. Then Chatan Asimcha, the groom of the celebration, who turned 5 in our village of Todra, would be taken to the synagogue. The alphabet would be written on a wooden board in honey, from Aleph to Taf, from A to Z. All the honeyed letters would call to him, "Lick us, friend," so the Torah would be in your mouth, as sweet as the taste of honey. In our village, Todra, that is in the Atlas Mountains.
In the village of Todra, that Scott so beautifully shared, is the creation of the incredible Israeli band Habrera Hativit, which paints a romantic portrait of the rich life of the Jews of the Atlas Mountains, the Berber Jews. The words of the song, the lyrics, were written by Israeli playwright Yoshua Sobol, known for his work in dramatizing and deconstructing foundational Israeli stories. And his political messages encourage audience to wrestle with the ethics of power and how the past is always present. The music itself was written by Israeli musical icon Shlomo Bar, who both as a solo artist and the lead for the band Habrera Hativit, is a pioneer for what would become known as world music, combining, in his case, the finest of North African musical traditions with blues, jazz, and rock. He's also been known for being an outspoken social activist and musical spokesperson for what is sometimes referred to as the Second Israel. The Jewish immigrants, mainly from Morocco and other Middle Eastern countries, who throughout Israel's story have struggled to overcome prejudice and have their voice heard. So the song in the village of Todra is set in a small village in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, some 6 to 7 hours from Marrakesh. But its remote location should not lead us to think for 1 minute that the area's Jewish life was poor. Far from it. The song shares an image of a Jewish life that is full of celebration and joy and simple, heartfelt traditions, the good times.
And we want to dive in today a little bit into this Jewish life, particularly of the Jews who were living in the Atlas Mountains and across these rural areas of Morocco and other countries across North Africa, whose main neighbors were the group usually referred to as the Berber. The term Berber, like the term Gypsy, right, the Romani and City peoples of Europe, the term Berber is actually, it's a pejorative. It was cast on the mountain peoples of North Africa by the Greeks and the Romans. The word barbaros simply comes from the idea that these were people who didn't know Greek. And so their speech sounded like so much bar, so much mumbling. Others have suggested that the word barbarian comes from people who wore beards.
Wow.
But in any case, the Berber referred to themselves as the Amazigh, or the Amazigan, the free people.
Is that where barber comes from?
Yeah, exactly. Everything has a history. Every word that we use comes from somewhere else, and making us aware of some of these things, that's one of the beauties that travel can add to us as people, as human beings. The image of these free people of the mountains of Morocco and of North Africa were even captured today very famously by the science fiction author who created the Dune series, the saga of the Atreides family, the psychoactive melange spice. Now, again, you may have read the books and you may have seen the movies, but once again, everything comes from somewhere. And this image of the Fremen, the indigenous people of the planet of Arrakis, is actually after the Amazigan of Morocco and the Tuareg of the vast Sahara. The indigenous peoples who lived in this area developed their own culture, their own language, and also had very unique relationships with the Jews.
Very cool. And if we think about the origins of the Jews in the Atlas Mountains, it's a little difficult, right, to kind of point to their exact origins and development simply because the Berbers didn't have a written history, right? It was all completely oral. And therefore, the information that we do have about Jewish life in the Atlas Mountains is mainly from travelers who visited there. There are a couple of written sources and, interviews with people who lived in these areas. Some say that Jewish sailors, during the time of the Bible, crossed the Mediterranean, arriving in Morocco and North Africa. That's one theory. It could be that they sailed for the kings of Judah and Israel, or perhaps they collaborated with the Phoenician people, a seafaring people who lived in what today is Lebanon. If we look back to Genesis, the tribe of Zebulun was associated with the sea, and its coat of arms bore a ship. Jacob blessed Zebulun, stating, Zebulun should dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Sidon.
It could be, other theories, that Jewish exiles fleeing a war-torn land of Israel crossed the Mediterranean to North Africa during the Assyrian conquest of the Kingdom of Israel and their conquest of large parts of Judah in 722 BCE, or following the Babylonian destruction of Judah and Jerusalem in 586 BCE. Clearly, by the 2nd century BCE and the establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty, we know them as the descendants of the Maccabees from the story of Hanukkah. Jewish communities already existed across North Africa, including in what today is Morocco. Additional Jewish refugees established themselves across the Mediterranean following the Jewish revolts against Rome and the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE.
And yet there are still other historians who suggest that the Jews of the Atlas Mountains, they grew mainly out of the indigenous Amazigh peoples who chose to convert to Judaism rather than accept Christianity or later Islam. But let's go back and take a look at a Jewish Amazon queen who predated Gal Gadot. This episode points to the antiquity of the Jewish presence in Morocco, and among the Amazigh tribes is a story of the warrior queen Dihya al-Kahina. So let's go back, set the stage, okay? It's the 7th century with the invasion of North Africa by Muslim forces, and they're approaching the city of Carthage, which is today Tunisia. Dihya al-Kahina, she was known as a Jewess, led an Amazigh army into battle against the armies of Islam. She offered the Muslim commander a chance to surrender to her and her army of free men, maybe women as well. He rejected that chance, and he demanded that she and her forces surrender and adopt Islam. She responded, I shall die in the religion I was born to. I love this story. Dihya's army beat back the Muslim onslaught, badass, and she became the ruler of Carthage. War continued for 5 years, till finally Muslim forces succeeded in defeating Dihya, sadly, and her armies. But facing defeat, she chose to end her life, throwing herself into a dry well. And her head was taken as a trophy. This is a part of the story I like less, and delivered to the Muslim caliph. But boy, was she a figure to contend with.
For sure. And again, like in a lot of these stories, we don't know exactly, is there a tough border between where history ends and legend begins? But we do know that her story was preserved and told by Berber peoples across North Africa. We know that the French referred to her as the Jewish Joan of Arc in the bloody war of resistance fought by Algerians against the French occupation. Local rebels adopted her story as a model of heroism and resistance. Although she's almost unknown in Israel, which just blows me away, this female Bar Kokhba is recalled in a modern book by the author Limor Sharir, who dedicated several chapters to the story of Dihya el-Kahina in a book titled Secrets of Marrakesh.
Amazing stuff. Let's leave the realm of legend for a moment and let's take a look and walk over to the rocks. If we look at archaeology, particularly in the Amazigh Roman city of Volubilis, Archaeologists have discovered a couple of things. There are Jewish gravestone inscriptions dating back to the 3rd century CE, which really show a concrete proof of a Jewish presence in the region. One tombstone contained the Hebrew inscription, "Here lies Matrona, daughter of Rabbi Judah." Really cool. And then they also found an ornate oil lamp topped by a menorah, dating back to the same period. So Jews coexisted within Berber society and lived alongside the Berber tribes, not only in the Atlas Mountains, but across North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. They had complete autonomy, communal organizations, and they also had the freedom of practicing their religion, which is always a nice thing. Jews were mainly occupied in trade and the crafts and weren't really so involved in the agricultural side of things. But there was some kind of understanding between the Berbers and the Jews about the structure of each group and who's doing what. So it enabled them in such a way to earn a livelihood. Like many other Jewish communities, the Jews of the Berber lands developed their own unique language, Judeo-Tamazight, which reflects a cultural exchange between Jewish and Berber communities. There are variations of Berber languages spiced with Hebrew and influences from Jewish religious texts, interestingly enough.
Definitely. I mean, Sorel pointed out earlier that part of the difficulty here is we're talking about an indigenous culture that didn't necessarily preserve written documents. Their history was oral. And so information on Jewish life also comes from travelers who visited the Atlas Mountains, from a few written sources, and from interviews that were done in later periods, 19th century, 20th century, with people who lived in these areas. Two main sources are Chayid Mordechai, written by Mordechai Cohen, a Jewish scholar from Tripoli who wrote about the Jews in Jabal Nefusa, which is south of Tripoli. An additional source, interestingly more modern, is a statistical study carried out by the Mossad in the early 1960s, the Israeli Secret Service, during Operation Yachin, the operation to bring Moroccan Jews to Israel. The Mossad study referred to Jewish life in Berber society really towards the end of its existence. In the village of Gourama in southeast Morocco, for example, they counted 285 Jews, 73% of them below the age of 30. About 20% of the families had 8 members, 50% fewer than 7. Jews were tailors, they were farmers, they were merchants, they were butchers. Although more research is needed, it seems that these figures do add to our limited knowledge about Jewish life in the Berber villages.
The Atlas Mountains are not just breathtakingly beautiful, they also deeply intertwined with the spirituality and history of Morocco's Jewish Berber communities. Scattered across the Atlas Mountains are the graves of revered figures, each one a testament to the rich spiritual life that once thrived here. And one of the most venerated is the tomb of Rabbi Shlomo Belhench, located just outside the Urika Valley. Rabbi Shlomo, also known as the son of the snake, sounds like an insult almost, is surrounded by legends that speak of a snake that circled his head. The story has it in childhood, a miraculous event that marked him as a healer and protector. To this day, his grave, which is preserved by a Muslim family, attracts visitors from around the world who seek healings and blessings. Some even believe that the snake was a divine omen, a protector of the land, and that Rabbi Shlomo's presence continues to shield the valley.
Not far from there, in the small town of Ur-Irgane, the shrine of Chaim ben Diorne holds another sacred site, where the tombs of revered rabbis stand as a reminder of the once thriving Jewish community. Every May, people gather for a festival there, honoring these spiritual figures whose teachings and presence shaped the local culture, remembered up until today. In the foothills of the Middle Atlas Mountains lies the small city of Sefru, a former Jewish Berber hub where Jewish merchants played a key role in regional trade. Although the Jewish population here has long since moved, their spiritual legacy remains in the local cemeteries, where the tombstones of Jewish Berbers still stand as silent witnesses to centuries of cohabitation and shared traditions between Jews and Muslims.
These grave sites are far more than just physical markers. They represent a deep spiritual connection that once linked Jewish communities to the land and people of the Atlas Mountains. Pilgrims continue to make their way, like we've said, to these tombs. They seek blessings. They seek healing. They have a sense of peace. They come to honor the memory of those figures whose lives bridged worlds of faith, culture, and community. And if you walk among the tombs and you pause at the shrines, there's a sense of quiet reverence in the air. We keep coming back to that word, revere, reverence, as if the land itself holds the prayers of generations past. It is in this rugged landscape where the mountains rise like sentinels that the connection between the physical and spiritual world feel most palpable. The stories of these saints are not only etched in the stone, but also live on in the hearts of all those who make this pilgrimage to honor their memory. And even those who are hearing about it for the first time today can take these stories with them, weaving a thread of continuity from past to present in the spiritual tapestry of the Atlas Mountains.
If we expand the picture a little to also include modern Israel, it's important to point out and remember nearly 250,000 Jews once called Morocco home. Most were Arab-speaking. Many were descendants of the Jewish exiles from Spain following the 1492 expulsion. And later in the major cities of Morocco, places like Fez, Marrakesh, Rabat, urban Jewish communities also adopted French language and culture as large areas of Morocco came under French colonial rule from 1912. From 1948, Israel became home to over 275,000 Moroccan Jewish immigrants. Today, in 2024, over 900,000 Israelis, maybe as many as 1 million, are Moroccan-born or descendants of Moroccan Jews. It's actually the largest Jewish ethnic group in Israel, nearly neck to neck with Israelis from the former Soviet Union. Today's Morocco's Jewish community numbers between 3,000 to 6,000. The stories of the Jews of the Imzigan, the Berber Jews, is only one little-known slice of the history and heritage and Jewish experience of the Jews of North Africa and the Mizrahi, Sephardi Jewish journey, the Oriental Jewish journey that came out of Spain and crossed into North Africa and really enveloped much of what became known as the Ottoman Empire, the land of Israel, and beyond. For most of us, likely arriving in America at the opening of the 20th century from Eastern and Central Europe, the story of the Imzigan Jews and of Mizrahi, Sephardi communities actually may be little known, and it's very unfortunate. Today's episode and our journey to Morocco will open a door for all of us to begin to learn more and begin to see this story not as a foreign visit, but to embrace it as our own. And now, something for the road. A tip, a recommendation to help you make every journey your own.
Shalom. My name is Ishai Shavit, and I'm a tour educator. Actually, I'm a Jewish tour educator. What exactly does it mean? We'll talk about that later on. I love traveling. I love traveling so much, so I started guiding people when I was 15 years old. When I was younger, traveling for me was to conquer another peak. Been there, done that. Check another box. But as I got older, I started looking at traveling on a whole different perspective. I started looking at getting to know other people, getting to understand other cultures. Not so much in order for me to understand how the people of Morocco think, as much as to understand how it is relevant to my life. And this changed the way not only that I travel, but also the way that I guide other people. Now, sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy to get into other people's shoes. Especially it's not easy when you get to countries like India or Morocco. And the question is, how do you do that? How can you achieve this notion that you understand the people that you're talking to? This person that you see outside of your window of your bus when you pass Casablanca. I find that reading a book or several books before going on a tour really helps me. And this is my tip for the road for today. I would like to recommend a book called The Caliph's House, A Year in Casablanca. It was written by a British author named Tahir Shah. He's from an Afghan origin. His wife was born in India for an Indian Muslim family. They got married, they moved to England, and when the kids came, they didn't want to raise them in England. They were looking for another place, another culture, and they chose Morocco. It really helped that Tahir Shah's grandfather spent his last 10 years of his life over there in Tangier, Morocco. And his father loved the place, and he spent his summer vacation during his entire childhood in Morocco, and he also fell in love with this place. So he decided to take his entire family and move to Casablanca. They bought a house, quite of a big house over there in a shanty town in Casablanca, not far from the water. They had no illusion about the condition of the house, but when they got there, they were really surprised. They were surprised not because they realized that they need to make this renovation. They were surprised from the meeting with the local guards. 3 guards were attending the house. And they started talking to each other. And they realized that there is this cultural gap because the guards kept on telling them about this house being haunted by jinns. Jinns? Genies? Okay, like in Aladdin, genie, but in plural. Those mythical creatures that no one can actually see, but they can cause a lot of damage, or they can bring prosperity, depends on the jinn. So how do you live in a house which is full of jinns? And how do you live in a house where your guardians, the people who are attending the house, the gardener, the cook, everyone believes that the house is haunted? How do you get rid of the jinns? So this is what this book is all about. And it's a fantastic book because, first of all, it is a very funny book. And if you want to fall in love with another culture, well, you better laugh. Okay? And also because it really opens a window to the hearts and minds of the people of Morocco. And that's why I really want to recommend this book. It will help you to understand how the people that you're about to meet in Morocco think and what they believe in and how it influenced their culture. Because Morocco that you'll visit and the Moroccans that you'll meet, some of them are coming from similar backgrounds as yours. But most of the people of Morocco do not. Okay, and if you really want to understand how the Moroccan culture evolved, you really need to try and understand them, to put yourself in their own shoes. That's not easy. Not only that it is not easy, okay, this is something that will really enable you to understand the Jewish life in Morocco is influenced from the Moroccan culture, of course, like anywhere else. So if you really want to understand the way of thinking of the Jews of Morocco, their culture, their books, the way that they pray in the synagogue and the way that they greet each other in the street, you really have to understand the Moroccan culture. So this book is a good place to start. The Caliph's House, A Year in Casablanca. And the most important thing, if you get to know a different culture, if you really are enabled to immerse yourself in this culture, to understand it better, it will really help you to make your life, your Jewish life in this case, more diverse. Because eventually, if you add this Jewish experience to the list of the Jewish experience that you had during your lifetime, well, it will open a window to a more diverse Jewish world. And this is a world that we all want to live in.
Thanks for listening. Dive deeper into the world of travel on our J Squared Adventures website. That's j2adventures.com. And stay in the loop with our latest adventures on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all under J2 Adventures. And if you enjoyed hanging out with us, don't forget to leave us a comment, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, travel safely and keep wondering. I'm Sorel.
I'm Scott.
See you soon with the Wandering Jews.
no. אצלנו בכפר תודרה שבלב הרי האטלס היו לוקחים את הילד שהגיע לגיל 5 כתר פרחים עושים לו אצלנו בכפר תודרה כתר בראש מלבישים לו שהגיע לגיל 5 כל הילדים ברחוב חגיגה גדולה עורכים לו שהגיע לגיל 5 אצלנו בכפר תודרה חתן השמחה שהגיע לגיל 5 אצלנו בכפר תודרה מכניסים בבית הכנסת וכותבים על לוח של עץ בדבש מאלף ועד תו את כל האותיות בדבש ואומרים לו חביבי לקט והייתה תורה שבפה מתוקה כמו טעם של דבש אצלנו בכפר תודרה שבלב הרי האטלס